Greetings and welcome back to Math with Zizi. I'm Ziba, your guide in the realm of mathematical understanding. Today we will embark on a journey into the fundamental concept of mathematics, that is functions. Before delving into this profound topic, I invite you, if you haven't already, to subscribe to our channel. For those returning, I express my sincere gratitude for your continued support. So, the subject of today's discussion, functions, are very important in mathematics and play a very significant role in scientific discoveries and practical applications. Now, consider this. Have you ever wondered how precisely we can predict the future events or model population growth or analyze everyday scenarios? Well, the answer lies in the concept of functions. Or take another example. Let's say, for example, how some people can make a good profit in the stock market, right? So before we proceed into the mathematical depths, let us ensure a collective understanding. If you're ready to embark on this intellectual journey with me, I encourage you to give me a thumbs up on this video, and please share me in the comments your thoughts on the significance of the functions. Okay, so now without further delay, let us start this journey about functions, their properties, and two main important characteristics, which are domain and range. So to make it very simple for you, the function, it's like a machine that it takes an input, okay? It takes an input, right? And then it does some kind of operation on it, and then it gives you the output. Okay? Most of the time, the input is shown with letter X. The function or the operation which is happening is shown here. It is shown with letter F. And then the output is shown with f of x. That means the operation done on x. Okay, let's explore these concepts a little bit more. So first of all, the input, it's actually the value you provide to the function. The function or the operation, it performs some kind of action or calculation on the input, and it gives you the result, which is all the output, or f of x. Now, let me give you an example. Consider a function that doubles any number that you give to it. So let's say this would be your function. Whatever you input, it times it by 2, doubles it, and it gives you the answer. So let's say if I give it 3, it times it by 2, then it gives you 6. Let's do -1, makes it double, the answer is -2. 0, times it by 2, the answer is still 0. Radical square root of 3, times it by 2, okay, 2 times the square root of 3. Now, this is the mathematical notation. F of x equals 2 times x. The f is the function. Now let's delve a little bit deeper into the concept of function in mathematics. This video is super important because it's the basics, or it's the fundamental of many future concepts, especially under algebra. So here we talked about input, operation or function, and the output. Okay, so let's talk about a little bit more about inputs, which is most of the time shown by letter X. This is the value. So input is the value you always choose to put into the function. Okay, and most of the time it's shown by letter X, but remember, it could be any symbol. So the X, which is the input, it's also called independent variable. So the x is your independent variable. Okay? And the operation or rule, remember we called it function, it's operation, or you will come across another term, the rule. Okay, the operational rule of a function describes actually what happens to the input to produce the output. This could be a simple mathematical operation like this one, simply multiplying by 2, or some kind of addition, subtraction, or it could be a very complex operation. Okay? Now let's talk about the output or the dependent variable. So output or dependent variable, okay? So this is actually the results that the function give you based on the input, right? It's often represented by a letter or variable y, but like the input, it could be any simple. So remember guys, here if the input is x, the function usually is shown with letter f most of the time, but remember it could be anything else. So the output is shown by f of x, or sometimes they use y. Okay, so y is the result. Now let's talk about some very important properties of a function, which is uniqueness, right? What do we mean by uniqueness? So that means for any input you put into the function, you should only get one specific output, okay? If I want to show you in a graph what I mean, okay, now I'm gonna show you, as I mentioned, I'm gonna show you in like a graph, or visually what I mean by a function. So here, any input produce one specific output, right? This is function. This is call it one-to-one function, okay? One-to-one function. So any input would produce a specific output, and we called it one-to-one function. There is another scenario which your input, okay, produce one unique, so this is the input, right? So one unique output. So even if you go B, you have this one, and for C you have this one. This is still a function, okay, but this is not a one-to-one function. By definition, this is also a function, okay? Okay, now let's move on to another representation of domain and graph, which most of you are not very familiar with, because this is shown in the form of actually sets. Let's say A, B, C, D, E, okay? And on this side, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? So let's do 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So here, what happens is A is connected to 1. This input creates this output. This input creates this output, and this input creates this output. And also this input create this output, okay? So if I want to write it, this is the inputs, okay? The brown arrows are the functions or operations, okay? And this one on this side is your outputs, okay? So if I want to show it, right, once more, these are the inputs, these are the outputs. So A creates 1, okay? B creates 3. C creates 4. And E creates 3, right? So you have 4 coordinates. So if I want to do a quick recap on what we said so far about the very basics of function, remember guys, we said y is equal to f of x, which the y is the output. Remember, output, okay? F is the name of the function, or remember, operation or function, and it could be any letter, but these are the most common ones. And x is your input, right? And for functions, right, we could have many different representation. One of them is sets, the other, which is shown like this, and the other one, which you are most familiar with, it's graphical representation. Actually, the function are mostly represented graphically on a coordinate plane. So let's say you are very familiar with this one, x-axis, y-axis, and this could be a typical function, right? A typical function. And here I want to introduce another 2 concepts which are very important. From now on, whenever you come across any type of function, you have to define its domain, its range, limitation, right? So let's talk about these 2 new concepts that I just named them. So we have to talk about domain and range. Super important. Super important. Okay, and what are these? So let's define what is a domain of a function and what are the notation, and then we move on to range. So the domain of a function is actually the set of all possible input values. Remember guys, input values were shown with letter X, inputs, or exactly, we had 3 different terms: independent variable, right? So all the possible input values for which the function is defined, okay? So it is the collection of X values for which the function produces meaningful output or range. So how do we show it in math, right? So let's say typically we use this notation D of F. That means the domain of your function, or sometimes you might see it like this, domain of your function, right? And here we assume that your function is shown with letter F. So once more, the domain is the X input or independent variable that the operation is defined, okay? So here, if you take a look at the graph, all these X values are the inputs. Now, what is the range? Now let's talk about the range. First of all, we talk about the concept. What is a range? The range is actually the set of all the possible outputs, okay? Once more, the possible output values, dependent variable, or Y. So Y outputs or dependent variable, right? These are all different terms that you can use to define a range, okay? So these are all the possible values that the function can produce. When you give an input to a function, okay, if the input, first of all, should be defined. So all the defined inputs are called the domain. So something happens on the input, then it produces the output. So all the output which is produced, it's called the range. Okay, so how do we show it? What is the notation? R of f, or range of f. Range of, assuming that the function is shown with letter f. Okay, so remember guys, understanding the domain and range is crucial. It's super important, especially when you're working with function, because it helps to define the scope of the function, and it provides you with the insight to the behavior. So remember guys, it is important to remember that not all input values may be valid for a given function. Remember, I told you there are some restrictions, okay? And the range reflects the possible outcomes based on the valid inputs, right? So if I want to do a quick summary or recap on the domain is set of the all possible x values for which the function is defined. Remember this one. And y is the set of all possible y values that the function can produce. And this thing here, this line, it's actually the relationship between any input and any output, right? So okay, and there you have it, an inside exploration into the fundamental concept of function, range, and the domain. I hope this short video clarified these mathematical principles for you, because understanding the concept, these very basic concepts, it's like unraveling the language of mathematics. It's the key to unlock the full potential of functions. But before we conclude, I want to encourage you to reflect on what we covered today. Take a moment to consider how functions play an important role in our lives and in mathematics. But remember guys, our journey doesn't end here. In the next videos of this series, we will delve even deeper and we will explore more advanced concepts into about functions, and we talk about the practical application of functions in real world. So I invite you to join me in the upcoming episode. Subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell, and be the first to embark on this mathematical expedition with me. See you soon.